now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And good morning, everybody. It is another rainy, muddy, awful day in California. It's really quite serious. We will certainly have some fun today on the show, but there's definitely a lot of stuff that's no fun related to this winter weather. Really going to be, again, a true luxury to be able to talk to Spencer Christian from ABC7. We'll do that in just a moment. I'll also just review some of the things that are going on in California with evacuations, with mudslides, with fatalities. It's really brutal. Kim will have a lot in her news. Yes, Kim is here. Kim, how are you?
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 And Albert is here.
Albert, thank you.
Yeah, we are excited. Tony's on the road, I think. Tony's getting David Katz hooked up or something.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, so anyway, that's what's going on with that. You can join us here every day, 10 to noon, live. And then, of course, you can rejoin us anytime. You know, you watch a little bit live. You can pick it up what you missed later on in the delay. Either way, hit us with a thumbs up. Smash that like button, baby.
With your iron rod.
Smash it hard, baby.
Smash it with your iron rod.
That's what I'm saying. It helps us in the YouTube algorithm. So, Gary Dietrich joins us. We'll talk about the new Congress. They are off the rails. I don't know if you've seen what's happened, but there are proposals to essentially defund and dissolve the House Ethics Committee. They are going to defund the IRS. They're looking into investigations that'll be cranked up. Jim Jordan is likely the jihadist on this and heading that parade, and they'll be investigating the Justice Department. So that, among others, there are also impeachment proceedings that there are sort of talk right now of the impeachment proceedings, but I promise you that talk will come to fruition. We'll speak about much of that with Gary Dietrich. He will join us in the second hour. Isn't that right, Albert? He joins us at 11 o'clock, right?
Yep, 11 o'clock.
And we also have a major announcement that I will save till a little after Kim's news at the bottom of the hour. Now, no more delay. Give it up for a guy you see on ABC7, the former Good Morning America weather guy. He is an institution now as a Bay Area weather guy, and we're just really, it's a gift that he spends time with us during this period of real urgency. He's Spencer Christian, everybody. Yeah. What up? Yeah, really cool of you, my friend. Really cool of you. I know it's been a rough night across the state, not just the Bay Area, not just Northern California. Southern California is being devastated by these unrelenting rains as well. How do you assess all of this and put it in some perspective, and where are some of the hot spots?
Yeah, well, I've been paying more attention, Mark, to the hotspots here in the Bay Area. I'm certainly well aware that Southern California is getting devastated as well. And the Central Coast, well, I guess you call that Southern California too. South of Monterey, down to San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara, Montecito, those areas are just getting wiped out. I saw, Montecito, as you know, it's the home of many famous celebrities, Oprah Winfrey, Ellen DeGeneres, and others. And I saw Ellen. Oh, there, you've got it right there.
Yeah, here, let's watch Ellen's thing. Albert, play that, will you please?
Montecito is under complete evacuation, the entire town. This is the 5-year anniversary from the fire and mudslides that killed so many people and people lost their homes, their lives. Yep. This is crazy. On the 5-year anniversary, we are having unprecedented rain. This street next to our house never flows, ever. Probably about 9 feet up, and it's going to go another 2 feet up. We have forces ready to evacuate. We need to be nicer to Mother Nature, because Mother Nature is not happy with us. Let's all do our part. Stay safe, everybody.
Yeah.
So it's serious when the rich and famous are having to be evacuated from their homes. It is unprecedented. I mean, we've seen isolated weather events like this before in California, but this is the first time in recent memory, I think, we've seen several consecutive days of devastating weather like this that's creating so much havoc. It's concerning. It's frightening.
Yeah, exactly. And you've detailed this for us before, but the phenomenon by which the soil becomes saturated and then the rains keep coming, that's what's producing these situations that are they're cropping up all over the state, the mudslides and the tragedy associated with many of these mudslides and this flooding.
That's absolutely correct. So when the soil is saturated as it is now, it started, this whole episode began back with the New Year's Eve storm. Remember that? And that dumped heavy rain on the Bay Area and saturated the soil. Then we kept getting rain on top of that, on top of that, on top of that. So the soil gets to a point where, the water has no other place to go but then to run off somewhere. And the soil becomes so loose that it rolls off as well. And as you probably know, mudslides not only can come right after a heavy rain, the soil can wait several days after the rain has ended, sometimes weeks. But because it has, it has no, no structure. It's loose. It just, at some point it breaks and it slides downhill, and you get the rock slides. And even if we get a little trimmer, when the soil is saturated like this, a little trimmer can loosen all that soil and cause a mudslide.
This is such a great point that Spencer is making. There's sort of a time bomb effect that this all has as even the floodwaters recede. And the soil and, as he says, the structure of the land has been so compromised that you end up oftentimes with these mudslides weeks later. And they can be massive mudslides at that. So this anxiety that we now live with about flooding and about mudslides that are going on at the same time that it's raining, that continues actually. I mean, if we want to be reasonable about it, it does continue long after the last drop has fallen.
It does indeed. And then, of course, we have the concern about trees toppling. I mean, we're talking about some huge trees here. It doesn't take a very large tree to do damage if it falls on a structure, on a house, or on a car, or on a person. But these are big trees now that had deep roots, but they can no longer, maintain their balance, their support. They can't stand up any longer because the winds are blowing constantly against them, and they're toppling as well.
What is the forecast, Spencer? What is, as I recall yesterday, you were saying there was a respite coming, and then yet another, I think you said a level 2 after that. But please, I know you have updated information this morning, so go ahead.
Yeah. So, today's storm is a level 2. It looks like we're going to get another storm overnight into tomorrow that will pretty much follow the same path as this one. It'll come on shore around midnight or perhaps a little bit afterward, and produce rain and fairly strong gusts tomorrow. Not quite so strong as the ones we had today. We're expecting gusts today up to between 45 and 60 miles an hour. So the next one comes in late tonight, and it'll produce rain during the morning commute and into at least a good bit of the day tomorrow. Now, Thursday, we think will be a mainly dry day for most of the Bay Area, but it's a little trailing edge of a cold front sweeping through the North Bay that may trigger some showers in the North Bay on Thursday. But much of the Bay Area will probably see some sunshine on Thursday. Same thing may apply to Friday. We're not sure about the Friday system yet. We see a little front that may sweep in a little bit farther south than the one on Thursday. But again, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a significant rain producer, and there'll be some periods of sunshine. So to the extent that we can dry out a bit, Thursday and Friday look like the best days to hope for that to happen. But then Saturday looks like another potentially level 2 storm coming in. So we think it could be a washout.
Can I ask about the Russian River and near the Guerneville folks? Because there was supposed to be some major flooding, and then they downgraded it yesterday to nuisance flooding. That's maybe it would just be right along the riverbank. So what's the latest? Do you know?
The latest I saw, Kim, was actually last night around, I think it was getting off the 6 o'clock news, so about 7 p.m. And I know they had downgraded the concern about flooding in Guerneville. They said if there was going to be any flooding at all, it would be minor flooding, whatever that means. But I haven't seen anything since then.
Okay.
I'll be going in early today. Well, early meaning like right after I finish the show, and I'll check on the latest to see what's going on. That may not do you any good then, but I just
It all
and shooter, you can always shoot us a text, and we'll we'll get the information on. I know that yesterday at this time, and I just wanted to be clear about this, there was this thing. We kind of were playful about it, where, you know, people from other parts of the country where, you know, they have tough weather. They go, oh, you Californians, you know, you just can't handle a little bad weather. I'm from Maine. I'm from, you know, New England. I'm from Detroit, whatever it may be, you know. And this is an extraordinary weather event going on in California. Okay, this has produced fatalities. It's produced unprecedented flood. Unprecedented may not literally be true. Like, I think there has been flooding like this, but certainly these are floods that are devastating. They're devastating to property. They're devastating to lives. The amount of water that's coming out of the sky, this atmospheric configuration that has produced these storms, is serious. So that's BS about, you know, you Californians, blah, blah, blah. I get it. We, as I said yesterday, no, you asked about it. It's not, you didn't say it. But it's true that we can be a little, you know, pearl clutchy when it starts to sprinkle. But this isn't that situation. This is a life and death weather scenario. And I wanted to be clear about that today when we spoke.
Yeah, and I appreciate that clarification, because you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, Mark. You know, the only thing I've seen in my more than 50 years of covering and forecasting weather that's sort of comparable to this, I don't know if you remember this, exactly 30 years ago, 1993, there were about 3 weeks of constant rains on the Mississippi, up and down the Mississippi Valley. And the Mississippi River from Minnesota to the Gulf of Mexico and all of its tributaries had devastating flooding. And GMA sent me out there for 2 weeks of coverage in the tri-state area of Missouri, Illinois, and Iowa. And I saw floodwaters standing, you know, 20 feet deep, covering the first and second floors of homes, as we've seen in some parts of the Bay Area. I was out on Red Cross rescue boats that had to go through these towns and literally rescue people from the rooftops of their houses, because the houses were flooded up to the second floor. And those floodwaters didn't recede for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I fear something like that happening, at least on a smaller scale here, where the floodwaters take so long to recede that not only is the damage so severe that it, you know, it's tough for us, for people to recover and rebuild their lives, but the contaminants that develop in the water can cause health problems.
That's a great point, and I hadn't even considered it. You know, it's something that you do consider when you look at hurricanes that affect, like, the Houston area or whatever, the chemical coast, as they call it, of Texas, because they oftentimes get hurricanes off the Gulf. And I know I used to watch you on GMA down there in all these different places. And but I never even considered the fact that, of course, those same things happen here in California as floodwaters begin to inundate areas and things that normally don't get inundated, and you'll end up with chemicals in the water, and that leaches into everything. I mean, it's a serious ripple effect, if you'll pardon the expression. That is, it's pretty brutal. Thank you for that. I didn't even think of it. Hey, man, I'll let you go. You're the best to spend time with us. We really,
I love you guys. Love being with you. So.
Thanks so much. How about it for Spencer Christian? Spencer will likely put the bat beam up again, so thank you.
You got it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay. I appreciate that. Spencer Christian, everybody. Yeah. Good stuff, huh?
The Mark Thompson Show.
He is a treasure. He really is. You know, with everything he's got going on, for Spencer Christian to spend some time with us is truly a luxury. Hey, smash the like button like a boss.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Smash it with your iron rod for Spencer Christian. Come on now.
You know, we're not alone either. We're talking a lot about Northern California. And I just found a video of Studio City flooding.
Show me your studios. So Studio City is where the, well, they call it Studio City because there are studios there. It's where Seinfeld was shot, and Everybody Loves Raymond, and all of these shows like that, and where they still shoot a bunch of stuff there on the Radford lot. Studio City is a magical place, but there are also canyons that go up and down from Studio City, like Laurel Canyon and Coldwater Canyon and Mulholland Drive. These are all sort of legendary Hollywood places, and they've all been closed. They're closed because of slides, as well as power outages. The same thing that's going on in the Bay Area is going on in Southern California, and the rain is unrelenting there as well. So Southern California getting jacked up. Exactly. Chris is right. Just like Northern California. So I want to talk to Steve Moskowitz, and then I want to show you a couple other kind of extraordinary things that have happened as well. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
how about it for Steve Moskowitz, everybody? Come on. Yeah, rain or shine, Steve's on the case.
That's right.
Steve, what was the thing I sent to you? I sent you something yesterday. Did you see it? I thought it was a good question.
Yes. This is coming up more and more and more.
It's about people who leave California. Sorry, go ahead. You go.
And there's a lot of states that don't charge any income tax, like our neighboring Nevada and Washington, Texas, Florida, and some other places too. And they get this surprise of their life. I'm thinking about Gomer Pyle saying surprise to Sergeant Carter when California says, hey, the fact that you don't live here anymore doesn't mean that California can't tax you. Under certain circumstances, they can. So what you want to watch out for is when you leave to do certain things and not do other things to minimize the chances that California will come after you. I have represented people that moved to China and to England, and California even chased them there. Going to another state is no problem. If you move to, you say, now you've moved to Texas, you don't have a thing in California, it's real easy for California to collect from you. And even in the foreign country. So the bottom line is California is an extremely aggressive state, far more aggressive than the IRS. And this is one of the big points you have to watch out for, how to effectively move out of here and minimize the chances they're going to try to tax you.
The things that you have to do, Steve Moskowitz, when you are going to leave California and move to these other states, so many people are considering it, so many people are doing it, do they have to be done before you leave the state? Or for those who are watching who have already moved, is there a way to sort of tie up the loose end after the fact?
Lawyer's answer, it depends.
Okay. Listen, I think that this is exactly the kind of thing that is a contemporary concern for so many of our viewers and listeners. I want you to reach out to Steve Moskowitz. This is precisely the thing that he can help you with. Any number of things: setting up a business, leaving California, minimizing your tax exposure, filing back taxes that you may not have filed, all of these things, getting your house in order for this year's taxes. 888-TAX-DEAL, 888-TAX-DEAL. 888-TAX-DEAL. You can also find him online, MoskowitzLLP.com, MoskowItz, MoskowItzLLP.com. If there are no other questions at this time, Kim, I'm going to excuse the witness.
You may excuse the witness, sir.
All right,
Thank
very
you,
good.
Your Honor.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. Steve Moskowitz, everybody. Yeah, how about it?
The Mark Thompson Show.
Several more inches could fall across much of the state today. 2 to 7 inches fell over 24 hours Monday night. Did you hear that? 2 to 7 inches of rain fell in the last day over much of the state. That's at the lower elevations. It was wetter in the mountainous areas of Southern California. A foot of rain fell there. The snow levels are really high because this is that warm weather that accompanies that tropical flow, right? So when they talk about the atmospheric river, it's the pineapple connection. I kind of actually like that more, but now atmospheric river seems to have caught on.
Right.
And the pineapple connection implies something that's very important, which is warm air. Warm air has two qualities. I mean, at least two qualities that apply here. One is it has the capacity to carry more water, right? You can, with a warm air mass, hold more water than with a cold air mass, all right? And the second is that because it is a warm air mass, it is warm and the snow levels rise. So a lot of the areas of the mountains that were getting snow get rain or they get wet snow. So the snow level definitely plays around. Anyway.
Matter of fact, I was just looking at a story about Sierra at Tahoe. They had scheduled their opening day. They say they're trying to keep up with plowing the roads, but Mother Nature's working faster than they can. And so now they don't know when they're going to open.
Yeah. I mean, in Santa Cruz County, just southwest of San Jose, many stayed home. The nearby river of one residence rising and flooding their residence. It just came really quick, she said, within a matter of minutes. It was from across the street all the way into our front yard. It went really fast. Driver killed, Montecito evacuated, child missing, that 5-year-old swept away by floodwaters near the Salinas River. Evacuations across, Santa Cruz County, power outages. Kim, I think, will detail a bunch of this stuff. Major road closures. If you don't have to travel.
So much that you can't say it all. Like there's so many, I
Right.
saw a list of 50 road closures in the Santa Cruz Mountains alone. So it's awful everywhere. And the rain just kicked up again here in the North Bay. So.
And again, we mentioned that the death toll now is 14 in California. You see that oak tree that fell in Napa County? 275-year-old oak tree fell.
I was just putting a picture in for news.
Oh, good.
I'll show it to
Okay.
you now if you want to see it.
Sure.
Yeah,
I just think it's.
This is one of my favorite wineries too. This is Satui Winery.
Oh,
They
yeah.
make an amazing Gamay Rouge. Well, they had this 275-year-old tree. You can see it standing on the left and falling on the right. It
Wow.
came cracking down overnight, and now the tree's gone. So they had a beautiful picnic area where this tree stood. It's a goner.
Man, finally think about all that tree has lived through in 275 years, But anyway, that's a little bit of what's going on around the state of California. Do you want some? I have some good news for you.
I'll take that.
Yeah. It's and then I want to acknowledge a couple of people who jumped in and supported us. Thank you of course, for hitting the like button, and also thank you for stickers and super chats. Really do appreciate it. A family found a hibernating bear under their deck,
Oh,
and they let it stay.
yeah, little fella, not causing any trouble.
The black bear was found nesting on a bed of leaves in a crawl space. This is in Plainville, Connecticut. And this bear was discovered by the family's dog. The dog was just getting squirrely, and it kept going back to this one spot, and they looked under it, and there it was, this little bear. And the owners of the house didn't believe it at first. They looked at the woods behind the house. That they were trying to figure out what's going on. But it is a little bear, and they're leaving it there. Of course, they've shot it on TikTok, and now it's become a viral sensation. It's been viewed more than 15 million times on TikTok. But they say they've spotted many bears near the property over the years, but this was the closest they ever had come to a bear actually being there. And they are leaving the bear to sleep. Now, when we say sleep, it's kind of huddled there. You can imagine with some of this commotion and with an iPhone or Android in its face, its eyes aren't closed, But and the Trump brothers wished that they had a gun so they could, take it out right there in the hutch, right? Isn't that what they used to do? They got that law rolled back, remember? I hate to make it political. I promised you good news, but I do want to say that was the most loathsome law that they allow you now. It was one of the first things that the new administration passed. I thought to myself, how could that possibly be a priority? That they allow hunters to, it had always been not allowed, that you're not allowed to shoot and kill hibernating bears. But now, because of that law that was rolled back in the Trump administration, those hunters can get right in there, knock out the whole, the whole crew. So
Doesn't seem fair.
It doesn't. It's not fair. But anyway, this black bear, which is the most diminutive type of bear apparently in North America, they're omnivores. They prefer wooded habitats, and they found their spot under this house. The adult males can get to 500 pounds, so it will get to be a big bear.
I'll ding you for diminutive.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll take a ding where I can get it.
Not that I have the ding power, but
well, you do. You have. I think you do have agency in establishing the ding power.
Okay.
All right. So can I? I'd like to quickly acknowledge some pretty cool people who are, I think, have made contributions along the way. Can I do that?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, and Albert has what is that, Albert? The Andreas is back, everybody. Come on, Andreas. Andreas is one of the great supporters of this show, and he supports Nikki's show. I see Andreas's name on Nikki's show as well.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll tell you the truth. Andreas, love you. I'm not going to cry.
I'm not gonna cry. cry.
but I'm feeling that pre-cry feeling.
I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry.
I thank you so much for the contribution and the support. And you are, wow, look at this. Mo Love, come on now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And a Big Dan Ashley shout out.
Big shout out.
And another Big Dan Ashley shout out.
Big shout out.
Yeah. I'm not going to cry, Kim.
I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry.
But I can hear the knot in your throat. I can feel the
Andreas,
emotion.
I'm going to give you a
thank you.
And another
Thank you.
Really do appreciate it. I was watching Kim's show, Nikki's show yesterday with Kim. Kim's on it as well. Yeah. And Andreas is on Kim's, Nikki's show. And I thought, oh, I miss Andreas. He's so supportive. But now that we're remonetized with super stickers and super chats, Andreas is back. He's better than ever.
Thank you so much.
So thank you so much, Andreas. We appreciate your support completely and totally.
Thank you so much.
Right. Very, very good. I think Andreas could single-handedly support this show. I'm just saying, we had to come to one guy. He might be the guy. Look at that. The audience. Love for Andreas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Making it rain in the chat. Eric's right. Yeah. Andreas, you are number one in the chat. Really love it. Thank you, guys. We're a crowd-funded show. The only way we stay on the air is with continued funding from the audience. It's just the way this platform works. So when you leave us super stickers, when you leave us super chats, as we're monetized, that is a great way to support the show. If you don't like YouTube or you don't want to contribute to YouTube, then you can go to our website, themarkthompsonshow.com, and you can contribute that way through Patreon or PayPal. But if you're watching in replay, there's a little heart there with a dollar sign. Boom, you hit it, and you can leave us a little something, so appreciate that. Kim's news, we have Gary Dietrich still ahead. Big news in politics. The new Congress has convened, and their agenda will likely disturb you. It's complicated, and I wonder how much of it they'll actually get done. Defunding the ethics committee, and it looks as though that's just the beginning of the defunding. We'll get to all of that.
Okay, also, good, because I have questions.
Yeah, and
I'll hold them.
And Gary has answers, so some good stuff. By the way, last thing, Kim, on your theme.
Yeah.
I got a note today from the guy who created your theme. We have a new news theme. And he said, I'm changing it. I'm modifying it. It comes in too big, and I'm going to give her more of a bet. So this is just a work in progress. But nonetheless, you do have the new theme, but it's just a placeholder for the modified theme. Yeah, the new one that's coming in. All right. So that's the latest on that.
I'm just glad to have a theme.
Yeah, I think it's cool to have a theme. I agree. All right. Much to do. Dietrich and more. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report sponsored by tax attorney Steve Moskowitz at 888 Tax Deal. Let's go back to the pictures of the flooding. Yeah, this is this is the way it's going here in the last couple of days, and we're getting more storms after this. So we're going to see more flooding. The Bay Area not even getting time to recover. A second storm moved in overnight, bringing more rain, the threat of even more flooding. The San Lorenzo River hit major flood stage in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and some spots yesterday were buried in water. Evacuations near the town of Felton. I'll show you some pictures. This is Felton in this area. This is Gilroy, where a house was inundated with water. This whole neighborhood in Felton, this neighborhood, by the way, is called Felton Grove, and it also was inundated with water. So it's it's a mess in these two areas, hard hit especially. The Russian River near Guerneville expected to rise again, cresting at 32 feet, receding a little bit later today, not as high as the forecast was. The original forecast was 40 feet. Now they're saying it's going to hit flood stage, causing what they're saying now nuisance flooding right around the banks. And this is Gilroy. We see here traffic moving again on Highway 101 through the Gilroy area after major flooding. Both sides of 101 through Gilroy were shut down for hours yesterday. There were massive delays for drivers. The road reopened last night, but other roads around the Bay Area are still too unsafe to drive. So make sure you check the roads before you head out. What you don't want to do is end up driving through floodwaters. Very dangerous. Several nearby homes here in Gilroy look like they've been swallowed up with water up to the second story, at least you can see here, nearly covering entire cars. The Uvas Creek isn't making anything better. It flowed and flooded parts of the Christmas Hill Park area in Gilroy as well. Congresswoman Katie Porter, she is going to be running for the Senate in 2024.
Bravo.
The Orange County Democrat began fundraising. She is one of an expected large list of potential candidates seeking the seat that has long been held by Dianne Feinstein. The 89-year-old Feinstein has yet to say whether or not she will seek re-election, but already people are lining up to replace her. So, yeah, I guess Katie Porter has your vote?
She does. I think she's brilliant. I think she's pure of both strategy and of heart, meaning her plans and concerns are those of the people. And I'm at least thus far, I don't see her beholden to special interests the way so many other representatives and legislators are.
She always tells it like it is. I like that about her.
And the way she tells it, of course, is terrific.
It's pretty good. The nation's greenhouse gas emissions steadily rising. Preliminary data released by a nonpartisan research firm shows emissions increased by 1.3% in 2022. An analysis by the Rhodium Group also suggests the U.S. is not on track to meet President Biden's goal of cutting greenhouse gas emissions in half by 2030. Arkansas is swearing in its first female governor today, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Yes, there she is. She took the oath as the natural state's 47th governor in Little Rock.
Of course, oaths don't mean a whole lot to her. It's good to take it for the photo op, but apart from that, yeah, right.
Promises, protect and defend the Constitution.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Just give me the vote. Okay, yeah, whatever.
Whatever do you mean? I don't know
right.
that even.
I have a meeting with a lobbyist in a few minutes, right?
So she's the 47th governor of Arkansas, and Sanders' father, Mike Huckabee, served as the state's governor from 96 to 2007. So she follows in her father's footsteps. And usually end with something kind of wacky, but this time I'm going to end with the Bay Bridge Lights. They are making a plea.
Oh, I'm so glad you're doing. I was just going to do the story. Thank you. It had been slated for yesterday. Please go ahead.
So the Bay Bridge light display, which I should have video of it because it's constantly changing and moving and dynamic and so beautiful. The Bay Bridge light display is on the verge of going dark by March 5th, and that is when it will be taken down unless a nonprofit raises $11 million. The founder of Illuminate says the money will not only keep the display going after 10 years, but also make it visible from every direction. Instead of just twinkling on the bridge's north side, the lights would be on the south side too. The donations are being accepted online. So they need to raise $11 million by early March. We'll see if they can do it. That's so beautiful.
That's a lot of money, though. I mean, what is the plan? I mean, I had read that they were looking at private donations that might actually get them there. Mm-hmm. Have you heard anything on how it's coming?
No, I think at this point, they're just asking for money from everybody.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, look, that's our plan, okay? Find a different plan. We want money from everybody. We can't all ask for money from everybody.
No, we can't all have our hand out at the same time. The news is sponsored by tax attorney Steve Moskowitz for more than 30 years. Steve has put his tax knowledge to work for individuals and businesses alike. Now, if they tried asking Steve Moskowitz to stave the Bay Bridge, like
yeah, that would be where we draw the line. Right.
If you need help with your taxes, give Steve a call, 888-TAX-DEAL. You can reach him on the web at moskowitzllp.com. I'm Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show.
They had to close down an entire radio station to silence him. And now, he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Thompson. Mark Thompson Show.
Well, thank you. As usual, I will tell you that smattering of recorded applause jacks me up. What can I tell you? I like it. So it's great to have you in the mix wherever you are, wherever you're watching. In California, it is our super downcast job to follow what seems to be pretty grim news when it comes to weather, but we try to follow it with the diligence and with the most current information and with those who can really lend perspective, and we'll continue to do that. If you're watching elsewhere, be glad you're not in California, because right now it is pretty unrelenting. The wind, the rain, the mudslides, there are sinkholes opening up now. I'm just seeing this. You're getting entire cars swallowed by sinkholes. It is it's apocalyptic in a certain sense. So anyway, all of that's going on. As I say, we'll continue to watch it for you here. Gary Dietrich, the political expert, joins us after 11 o'clock. And Gary is a great mind on politics and maybe can recalibrate for us what's happening in the new Congress. As I mentioned to you, there's a real danger that you're going to have with this new Congress. Of course, everybody knew that the agenda would be associated with investigations and politically motivated investigations, many would say. But they're going to investigate the Justice Department. I think, and this is what I want to ask Gary about, they may play with monies to the point that they will defund the ethics arm of the House. And they're talking about defunding the IRS as well, or at least parts of the IRS associated with collecting taxes from the higher wage earners and businesses, corporate taxes as well. Again, I'll talk to Gary about this, and some of this is demonstrably the case, and some of these things are just sort of being talked about. So I think Gary can separate one from the other. And then we talk about what they could literally do to shut the government down. The government needs to be funded. And oftentimes, to get their way, some of the radical arms of the legislative process, as manifested by, the Matt Gaetzes of the world, they take hold and they literally will shut the government down to get their way. And by the way, I believe this has been a strategy employed by both parties, but I really want to get to Gary to at least, as I say, put some reality on it. So we'll do that just after 11 o'clock.
I'm hoping we can ask him about this whole documents flap with President Biden. Have you seen this story?
Yeah, and I think it's a fair question to ask, I mean, look, it doesn't weigh in at the same level as the Trump hijacking of all those documents, please. Yeah. And then he actively moved them to try to, in the case of Trump, keep them from being returned. Then he tried to cover up the number of documents and their location, et cetera. This is different that way, but it's still documents taken from the White House. They shouldn't be taken. So
shouldn't be taken, shouldn't have been left there, even if they were allowed to be taken. The difference is, I think you're right, that when discovered, President Biden gave them all back in a hell of a hurry, right?
Right.
And we're talking far fewer documents. We're not talking hundreds of whatever. So there are differences, but still concerning and, deserves a mention, I think.
Yes, I agree. I want to congratulate a North Carolina woman. Yes, she won the lottery. A $1 million scratch-off. Then, she won a second jackpot.
What?
Worth $2 million on another it was just 2 months later.
What?
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah, I know. It's not.
That's not fake. That's real.
It is real. Kenya Sloan is her name. She's 40 years old, of Shelby. That's Shelby, North Carolina. She is someone who's won a total of $3 million in 2 months. As I say, in August, she won $1 million on Carolina's jackpot. Just a few weeks later, in October, she won $2 million on a Diamond Dazzler jackpot.
Wow.
She had never played either game before when she won. Come on.
What?
I know. Most people who win the lottery are regular lottery players.
You remember the story I told you about the lady at the convenience store who stole thousands of dollars worth of lottery tickets?
Sure, and
she won quite a significant amount.
Right.
And she cashed them in at a different store. Are we thinking Shelby there was some, hanky...
Oh, you think that there's something hanky coming on? I like it. I like it.
She won twice in a row. Either she's the luckiest lady alive, or
Kim is saying that there might be some kind of caper going on where it was
back to back it like that. I don't know.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
Well, something worked, but all right, let me argue on behalf of Lady Luck and Kenya Sloan, 40 of Shelby, who won the $3 million. If you're going to do something like this, don't do it within 2 months. Don't do it at the same. Well, it actually wasn't at the same place, though. It was two different things. I was going to say, don't do it in the same place. That was Kim's story that she's talking about was a woman who took she's an employee, took all of the tickets from the one place, from the one location. So that was kind of like a bad plan, right? Because it's pretty obvious. This one is $1 million on the Carolina jackpot and then $2 million on the Diamond Dazzler. So that is a different lottery game. You know what she did before she became wealthy and now she just sits back and, drinks Mai Tais and plans vacations? She was a McDonald's manager. She was a manager at McD's.
I have to say, if the people I want to win are people like that are struggling, that are, have a job where I don't know how much you make as a manager at McDonald's, but probably not that much.
About $300,000 or $400,000 a year, I think.
Is that what it is?
I'm kidding. No. Kim is so nice. I can say anything, and she go, "Really? Do you think that's what it is?" Like knowing, Mark, you were so fun. It was a joke. It was a joke, Kim.
Yeah. It's not what it is. So it's not. At least, you got somebody who's
no, you're right. Somebody who's making barely over minimum wage, and they're slugging it out.
Maybe the manager makes a lot. I don't know.
No,
I've not worked at a McDonald's. These are things I'm not aware of.
Yeah. I've not worked at McDonald's either, but I know the manager doesn't make $300,000 or $400,000 a year. I will tell you that
the owner might.
That she is the person that you want to win. She is. It was the first time she'd ever played the game back in August when she won the $1 million. She bought a home. When she actually bought a plot of land to build a home is what she did when she first won. Then she wins this Diamond Dazzler, the $2 million. And she said, I was like, no way this happened again. But it did. I told some of my family members, and they couldn't believe it either. She has now decided her restaurant will be the next big dream of hers to complete. She's going to open her own restaurant.
She needs to win a third time now. Did you see the way when she won the first time, she got a taste of victory in her mouth, and then she went back for more tickets?
Yeah. She did take the lump sum, for those who want to know, $800,000. I'm sorry, $600,000. It came out to, after taxes, she did not talk to Steve Moskowitz, $426,000. So off of the $1 million, she got $426,000. Gosh, off the $1 million, she got $600,000. Off the $600,000, she got $426,000. So pretty amazing. But yeah, she's the kind of person you want to have winning, and she can really change her life, But as we told you before, there are plenty of cases where people win a bunch of money and they end up literally broke within years,
And big money too, like the hundreds of millions, and then poof, they call it the lottery curse. Either that or something horrible happens to your health.
Yeah,
I think they're inventing reasons why we shouldn't be dreaming about it.
Yeah, and did you see tonight's Mega Millions jackpot is $1.1 billion right now.
Yeah.
Cash
Are you going to get in? You're going to jump in, right, Albert?
Million. I might throw my hat.
It's now reached the threshold where you'd participate, don't you think, Albert?
Yeah, when I see the B, I'm
Albert, thank you.
He likes, if it's just in the millions, Albert's not really a player, but once he sees the B, yeah. As long as I've got you, Commissioner, quick thoughts on the college game last night. It was pretty much a blowout. I shouldn't say pretty much.
It wasn't a game
blow.
last night. It was.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
It was ugly, and it was expected, but it was a nice. Overall, the college football playoffs has been like this championship game in a nutshell. That's been representative of how the playoffs have been going. But the first two games a couple weeks ago, those were great. The games that TCU won was really fun, and then very underwhelming for a championship game.
Yeah, sadly. There's a new budget. I kind of was going to wait for Dietrich, but I feel like I'm going to hit him with a lot of national stuff. What do you think I should do here? Should I do a little bit on Gavin's new budget?
Yeah.
Or should I wait for Gary Dietrich to do it? What do you think?
Maybe we could talk a little bit here and then start a little bit with Dietrich.
No, look at you. Yeah, a little bit.
Get to some McCarthy stuff. I know he reached out to us too. He wanted to really talk about it.
Okay, so let me do a little bit on Gavin's budget.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I call him Gavin. I've never met him before. Governor Gavin Newsom unveiling today a $297 billion budget proposal. And it does reflect a $22 billion projected shortfall. That's right. I mean, this is big change from the last budget cycle. You remember that was a $100 billion surplus. Here you're going to end up with a $22 billion deficit, shortfall. Newsom wants to increase funding for his programs aimed at getting people off the streets. $223.6 billion for the general fund. Newsom pointed to the volatile nature of California's tax revenue, which is highly dependent on capital gains made by the state's highest earners. We've known this for a long time, right? That California is propped up by rich people.
Yep.
He says that the state's reserve accounts, including the $22 billion rainy day fund, will allow the state to weather the economic headwinds, which he said, quote, soften the edges of the volatile stock market. Yeah, when the stock market is up, it's good for California. When the stock market is down, not so much. We're not touching the reserves to make up for the projected deficit, he says, because we have a wait-and-see approach to the budget. He said that he may alter that decision in May when he'll update his proposal. He proposes delaying some planned spending and cutting in other areas. Among the areas he's going to cut, $3.1 billion from the state's climate and transportation programs, $600 million from the state's housing programs, and $106 million in workforce training. And again, he says if there ends up being more money than projected, we'll restore many of those programs. He's not going to make cuts to the state's public schools, and he'll continue to spend money combating the state's homelessness crisis. Also said his plan would actually increase the budget for the state's public university systems using bond funding to do that. So those are the headlines. The opioid crisis, there's money in there for that, almost $100 million. And this is a lot of that money goes to this drug, how do you say it? Naloxone? Is that how you say it? Naloxone? No.
Which
it's
drug are we talking about?
It's Naloxone. So it's naloxone. Naloxone. Anyway, a lot of this money goes to that.
What's that drug for?
It's It's really Narcan that can reverse overdoses. That's what it does.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're going to put that drug, and this is a sign of the times. There's $3.5 million to direct that drug into high schools and middle schools. So I know it's just a sign of the times, friends. That's just the way it is. So you saw also just on that, I was going to mention this the other day, and again, the weather and a lot of other stuff sort of takes precedent.
Yeah.
There is with opioid overdoses in the city on the rise, more regular people are carrying Narcan. This is in downtown San Francisco. I was a piece in the, I think it was in the LA Times this piece came from. But there was an overdosing, and as a woman lay on the ground unresponsive, another person, paramedics, another person called 911. Paramedics arrived, administered this nasal spray 2 or 3 times. After a minute, the woman regained consciousness. This is the power of this stuff. It's this stuff, Narcan. It's not Noxolone. Is that what you said it was? That's how you say it. It's Narcan, right? We know Narcan. A life-saving medication can reduce or reverse the effects of opioid drug overdose. And now, more and more public health staff through California are required to carry Narcan in medical kits. And here's the change, more and more people have Narcan on them. I mean, regular people. It's being proposed that, bars and restaurants have it. I mean, this is the frequency with which we're dealing with these overdose situations. Naloxone. Thank you, Huge in Japan. Yeah. I really can butcher the pharmaceutical world.
Naloxone.
Titles.
Yeah.
Naloxone. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think in one way, I think that's a good thing. In another, I wonder if a person without any medical training administers Narcan to someone because they've, passed out, you don't know whether that person has overdosed or not. So can you do them harm by administering that drug when they didn't need it or that wasn't what was wrong? Maybe they had a heart attack or a stroke or something else. If it's obvious, or if someone is saying, they just took a bunch of fill-in drug X and
Sure.
passed out, then, and you have a pretty good idea that is what's needed. But I worry that people without training will be giving it to people that don't need that drug.
This is a really great point that Kim's making. The only thing I would say is if you recharacterize or reframe this and think of it as an EpiPen, okay,
Right.
you end up with what is the way that the society, and in this case of San Francisco and California and places where these overdoses, these opioid overdoses are happening with such frequency, you end up seeing how it's framed that way to make more sense.
Right.
You're right. You, on some level, would think you need some training. But when somebody is overdosing, and people are overdosing on the levels that we are, there were 625 overdose deaths, I think, last year. It was like
It's horrible.
It's incredible. And in San Francisco, Matt Haney introduced that bill that would require bars and gas stations and restaurants all to have this Narcan there. And he said it's cheap and effective. It's common sense that it should be accessible everywhere it's needed. Mm-hmm. It is available without a prescription in pharmacies like Walgreens and CVS. It's $30 to $200. So, Kim, you don't need a prescription to get this stuff. And increasingly, it's a medication that people, because of the nature of these overdoses happening everywhere, people want this stuff in their car. They want this stuff on them so that they're able to help if needed.
I just got a text, the information from the National Institute of Health. Naloxone can quickly restore normal breathing to a person if their breathing has slowed or stopped because of an opioid overdose. But naloxone has no effect on someone who does not have opioids in their system.
Wow.
And it is not a treatment for opioid use disorder. So basically, no harm, no foul, right?
Wow.
I take it back.
Yeah.
So if you give it to me and I didn't need it, no harm done.
Yeah.
That's not fake. That's real.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, and you see they have any number of stories, and I'll just relate one. That's a 30-year-old woman in the city, San Francisco, saw her mother overdose on synthetic opioids more than once when she was a kid. She grew up in a house where this was going on.
Yeah.
In 2009, her friend died of an overdose just 3 days before his 16th birthday. She says, watching all that happen when I was a kid really changed things.
Yep.
Since then, she keeps Narcan on hand. And her mom's been sober now for years, but she keeps it stocked on hand and in her home just in case. So it may become the new EpiPen, I guess is the point.
My thanks to John Daly for that text, by the way.
John Daly.
I know. But I will say, if it was my kid that was overdosing, I'm grateful for anyone who would step up to help like that.
Of course, yeah.
So,
No,
why wouldn't I then turn around and do the same for someone else?
Agreed. I mean, and when you know what you've just passed along, I mean, what's the downside? Nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
All right, smash the like button like a boss.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Yeah, smash it. If you've got an iron rod, go for it. Now, iron rod can it rust in this kind of rain? The iron rod. I mean, I have a lot of questions about the iron rod,
Smash
but if you have
with your iron rod,
just smash it. Hit the like button if you're watching in replay. Hit the thumbs up. On deck, the great Gary Dietrich, as I mentioned at the bottom of the last hour, he has perspective on the new Congress and everything going on. So we'll get to Gary next after Kim's news. Much to do. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and this report sponsored by tax attorney Steve Moskowitz at 888 Tax Deal. I'm going to play this video. It's only 10 seconds, and I won't be able to talk over it, but check out this storm damage from Salmon Creek River in the Bodega. Trying to make another walkway after one has washed away. And that's
Where is that?
That's Salmon Creek out near Bodega Bay.
Wow.
Yeah. No let up across California as another round of storms move. Back-to-back storms coming into really across California, I should say. This is actually in Paso Robles, where a 5-year-old was swept away in floodwaters. This happened yesterday. Crews on the Central Coast prepared for water rescue. They still, though, have yet to find this little boy. He was headed to school with his mom when her truck got stuck in a river crossing, I should say, near Paso Robles. Neighbors pulled her out, but her son was carried downstream. A search went on for at least 7 hours. Only his shoe was found. Looks like San Luis Obispo County fire officials say the water from this tributary or river flooding area likely flowed into a nearby river, so they're having to search all these other waterways in the area, and again, they still haven't found this 5-year-old boy. In the South Bay, a lot of people without power. Matter of fact, 189,000 people across California waking up without power this morning. Santa Clara County hard hit, especially Gilroy, where there are a lot of homes and streets underwater, and evacuations happening all over, including parts of Santa Barbara County. Areas that were scarred by wildfires are under threat again from landslides and such. More risks of trees falling. We saw this picture earlier. See if I still have it in here. This was the picture of Satui Winery, where they lost a 275-year-old oak tree. Unfortunately, this guy came right down. Here's the photo. See if I can get it up there for you. Yep. Such a disappointment. But there's a risk of more trees falling across the Bay Area. High wind warnings in place again. We know a Castro Valley teenager had a close call after a 100-foot tree came right through the roof of his home yesterday, landed just above his bed. He was asleep at the time. He said it is the loudest noise he has ever heard in his life. And this is the winery in Napa Valley, Satui. They are mourning the loss of an iconic oak tree that fell in the storm. Officials there say they considered that tree part of their family, and now it is gone. Let's keep this picture up, talking about storm damage. U.S. Army Corps of Engineers making it, engineers, plural, making it easier for ships to travel during the storm. A recovery boat spotted yesterday in Sausalito, clearing massive tree limbs from the water. Heavy rain and high winds sent a lot of debris into San Pablo Bay, Sassoon Bay, and the San Francisco Bay. Experts say most floats just under the surface and can cause real damage to ships. Ferry boats are especially vulnerable due to their high speed and their frequency. And this report is sponsored by tax attorney Steve Moskowitz. For more than 30 years, Steve has put his tax knowledge to work for individuals and for businesses. So if you need help with your taxes, Steve Moskowitz, he's the one to call, 888 Tax Deal. You can find his website online, moskowitzllp.com. I'm Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Well, I'm very excited that you have joined us on this very wet day and wet week and what appears to be a wet start to the new year. To call it wet is really to understate it in the extreme. You just heard everything from Kim. We've been talking about much of it for the last hour. If you missed any of it, Spencer Christian was on, and he spoke in some detail about what to expect. So it's against that backdrop that we move on, but we have one eye on all breaking news when it comes to weather. As we do on this platform always, because this is the nature of this platform, YouTube, we ask you to hit the like button with a thumbs up, regardless of where you're watching or how you're watching. If you're watching in replay, hit us with a thumbs up. It helps us in the YouTube universe, the algorithms they use to.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Exactly, smash it. How about smashing it for Gary Dietrich, everybody? He's the political ninja. And it's a first conversation with Gary for the new year. Happy New Year, pal.
Hey, likewise, buddy, to you and the rest of the big time team there. And man, I'm just telling you, the swag shop there gets more and more impressive every time they come on, bro.
Gary, we have the throw pillow, which if you play your cards right, we might be able to get you one before the before
well,
the
I'll let you know I've been enjoying my inaugural Mark Thompson Show mug over the holidays. So thank you, brother.
That mug will bring good things to you. It really, there's a magical quality to all of our swag and all of our merch. It brings a certain shimmer to your life. Now,
no doubt.
I have so many questions for you, and I'll try to pack them all into this short time that we have. Let's start the national stuff, and then I can maybe get to Gavin and the new budget, but I really want to start with the national stuff. So the new Congress is there. It appears that McCarthy had to bend over backward. You can tell us exactly what kind of compromises he had to make, but it seems as though what I would have heard termed and what I might even call the more radical wing of the right wing of GOP had forced these sorts of concessions out of McCarthy. How will we see that played out? First of all, do you agree with that? And how do you see that played out over this new Congress?
Well, I think, Mark, there certainly is a portion of that that's accurate. But, as often happens in the media, that story, I think, has been overplayed some as well. If you look at what was actually in the rules package, every time by the way, a new Congress comes in, and that is literally every 2 years, the House is reconstituted, because remember, all 435 of them have to run for office every 2 years. So, hey, 2 years from now, we get to do this all over again. But the bottom line is, first things first, got to have a speaker. Otherwise, as I think people now have learned, you can't even swear in every member until you have a speaker, which is an interesting deal. Second order of business is the adoption of a so-called rules package. That simply means, how are we going to conduct this House for the next 2 years? That happened last night. The only addition to that, or change in that, by the way, that happened from the beginning of last week to the end was the shift from 5 members to 1 member being able to call for a vote to so-called vacate the chair. That is, take an up or down vote on the speaker. It's really interesting because Nancy Pelosi had nixed that. That was in place. That is the 1 vote rule, the 1 member rule. Prior to 2019, she said, nope, we're going to go to a majority vote of either party. Well, McCarthy would love to have had that, but couldn't get it. Really, an honest truth, that doesn't make much of a difference. Why? Because any member can call for a vote of the speaker, but you still have to have a majority to throw him out. So, it's really kind of neither here nor there, but they wanted sort of a symbolic, empowering of the membership. I think we already have one piece of legislation off the floor. That is the Republicans' promise to do away with funding for these new 79,000 IRS agents over the next decade. Again, that was somewhat symbolic. That would have to pass the Senate. Chances of that happening, I don't know, probably not very good right now, given that it's democratically controlled, and that was a Biden effort. But suffice it to say, Mark, we're going to know a lot more in the next week or two about how, if anything, these rules really hamper or move forward, a McCarthy speakership. Last deal is, the so-called side agreements. What were those? Well, we'll see how that pans out as well. But I think right now, it's sort of like full speed ahead. Let's see how the ship, floats or doesn't float in the next week or two.
Well, you really do put that in perspective. A lot of the stuff that was grabbing headlines may not really be headline worthy in terms of what it actually does. But one thing that's grabbing a headline, and it seems as though this might be worthy of the headline, is this gutting the House Ethics Committee. I wonder if you could weigh in on that.
Well, there's going to be a full reconstitution, as there always is, by the way, of committees. I mean, there'll be new committee chairs because they were all Democrats last time around. That won't be the case now. There will also be shifts in membership for two reasons. One, because some members left the House, a whole new slew came in, and people sometimes want to change their committeeships based on a variety of things. So, you can expect to see, as these committees come together, a better feel for that. There certainly will be new investigative committees. Republicans made that clear, as did Democrats when they came in 2 years ago. So again, the next couple of weeks are going to tell us a lot about what's going to be emphasized and what's not going forward in this Congress.
It just does seem as though the Office of Congressional Ethics should exist, though, Gary. Doesn't that? I mean, is it just me? Am I? When you say we'll have to wait and see, I mean, you must concede that dissembling the Office of Congressional Ethics is. It would seem to run afoul of those things that to the watching of the watchers, if you want to think of it that way.
Right. Well, I certainly think, when you talk about a quote unquote dismantling the Congressional Ethics Office, that can sound bad. The reality of this politically, Mark, is that office would have been staffed up by Democratic staffers. That certainly needs to change in Speaker McCarthy's view. So this is not that uncommon. I would expect to see, here's my expectation. We will have some sort of a congressional ethics operation. It is not uncommon for these panels and offices, et cetera, to be renamed and restaffed. So again, let's see how this plays out. Do I think there's going to be a free-for-all without any ethics rules? I highly doubt it. The question is how that moves forward. One of the big early indications of what's going to happen is, how this Republican Congress chooses to move forward or not on the revelations of the last 24 hours that, at least maybe a dozen, maybe fewer classified documents were found in President Biden's office. Where does that whole thing go? So there's a lot to be determined here. Again, I'm not trying to make excuses for anybody, but when you reconstitute, happens, by the way, same thing happens here in the California legislature. Certainly if you have a change of speakership, which we're going to have mid-year here, and things, the chess pieces get moved around.
Right. I mean, when we talk with you, you do put it into these perspectives, which are healthy. It's just weird against that backdrop, the ethics, and as you say, maybe the restaffing or reconstituting of that ethics committee. I see the quote from George Santos. I mean, here's another guy, and you're right about. And I want to double back to the document thing in a second. But I mean, this guy
the
is
ethics department, right?
Yeah, right, and that's why I mentioned it. I mean, he said, "I think it's fantastic." I mean, and again, maybe you could argue that this is the media spin. I don't know. Santos, of course, lied about his background is under investigation for in multiple countries apparently. And does face at least 2 Office of Congressional Ethics complaints related to his financial disclosures, okay? Now he's sworn in, and I guess he's rooting for what you're talking about, which is a reconstitution of that Congressional Ethics Office, because that would maybe get him off the hook.
Well, Santos, look, let's be clear about this. This was a guy, Republican, Democrat, or none of the above, that I'm sure Kevin McCarthy would do just as soon at this juncture had not been elected. I mean, creating more headaches than his one vote was probably worth at this point
right.
for the speaker. You know what I mean? I mean, seriously, and all this stuff, of course, came out after the election. This stuff happens. It's unfortunate. Again, I'm not making excuses for anybody. Here's McCarthy trying to cobble together a majority. Here's one guy from New York. Okay, fine. He got elected. Okay, listen, bro. It would have been helpful for you to tell us this stuff in advance. Okay, I'm sure that's what McCarthy's people have told him. I'll tell you this: he is not going to escape scrutiny. I mean, Democrats are going to make sure of that they're going to want to make him. They're going to want to make him the poster boy for all that's wrong with newly elected Republican members. I mean,
all eyes on Santos, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like
it's a sexy story too. It's the media won't let it go.
Here's the bottom line: he's a newly elected congressman. Okay, he's in the majority. He's going to be in the Rayburn building in a very small closet-sized office with 2 staff people sitting around looking at each other, going, "Geez, what do we do today?" I mean, that's about. You know, that's
not
how
fake.
this stuff,
That's real.
That's how this stuff happens. You know, is he going to get some big chairmanship? No. You know, is he going to be a high profile guy? Obviously not. It's going to be, George, thanks for coming. How about taking a break in the office cafeteria for the next couple of weeks?
Do you think he'll be shunned? You know, nobody wants to be seen with this guy. Nobody wants to ally with him. Or do you think they just won't care and they'll just be like, all right, come on in, let's get it done?
Well, again, there's 434 others. This is one thing I remind people about the insanity of our House of Representatives. I mean, it is a remarkable thing to me that it actually functions in any fashion. Because just imagine yourself on a committee or a quote unquote decision-making body with 434 other people from every stripe of this and every inch of this country. I mean, I'm not being facetious here. Isn't it somewhat remarkable that anything gets decided out of that? So to your point, Kim, he will be shunned. I don't know. Ignored is probably a better word.
Yeah.
I was president of my homeowners association, and it was a bunch of rich, entitled people. There were only 16 of them, but I'll tell you, it was the longest year of my life.
Well, I'll tell you what, HOAs, that's a whole different story. Those stories are legendary. And especially, you know, Mark, when, as you say, most of these HOAs, it's not like there are thousands of units and thousands of votes in these things. It's not uncommon for there to be a few dozen or you know, less than 100. But you would think, you know what I mean, that you're in the United Nations in some of those meetings.
It's true. And by the way, just on the HOA digression, the thing with HOAs, I found this out later, was the small number of people involved in the HOAs, the small number of homeowners is actually bad if you're trying to get stuff done because all the voices are really loud. It's when you have hundreds of units, that's when you can really get stuff done because it becomes this body that just makes a decision and you don't have to sit there and listen to, you know, everybody in 1A and 5B kind of, you know, et cetera. But now to this world of the budget and holding the government. The notion there could be a government shutdown. I was going to say, you know, holding the future of the government, the U.S. government, the funding of the U.S. government hostage to whatever interest. Right. Speak to that possibility.
Well, as you guys probably are well aware, two really key things here. Number one, and this goes back to all of our civics 101 classes in high school, you know, all fiscal measures for the federal government must originate in the House. What does that mean? That means the budget starts there, you know, and then it goes to the Senate and then to the president. So, you know, it goes to the Senate almost always. Well, I guess I could say pretty much universally, it's not agreed to in whole. They have to have a so-called conference committee between House and Senate members. They cut a deal between the two houses, and then it ends up going to the president. Now, that's number one. Number two, delays in a budget. That's become routine, right? I mean, it's just like, and part of the reason is because it is the single most important thing the House does every year is pass a budget, right? And it is the same is true here in Sacramento. It is the sort of foundational governing piece of legislation that determines who gets funding for what priorities are going to be. And that's why, for example, today, the governor's, you know, release of his own proposed budget is going to be a big deal, because it is always the single most important piece of legislation that gets passed. To your point, Mark, are there going to be, you know, consternations voiced on both sides? Yes, as there always are. Will the government be, quote unquote, held hostage? Well, so to speak, yes, as it often is, because people are holding out for their priorities, their versions of what should happen. In the end, as you know, it becomes often a gigantic game of political chicken and a calculation of who will pay a bigger political price if a budget deal is not moved forward timely. So, you know, that's going to happen. It always happens, it seems, these days in Washington. By the way, it used to happen here in Sacramento. I remember the days when state budgets, though they were supposed to be constitutionally done by July 1, would drag on for months, especially when you had a divided government. You know, say a Republican government, when you had, say, Pete Wilson and a democratically controlled legislature, a la Willie Brown. So this will happen. Will it eventually be a funding mechanism? Yes. You know, we've seen unfortunate things in the past with national parks like Yosemite and others shut down as part of this. I hope that doesn't happen.
I get what you're saying, and of course you're right. We saw it in the last administration, and we've seen it in the past. And I think you know, as usual, detail so effectively the history of this stuff. It's I'm seeing in the chat, and that's why I want to kind of do a quick follow up. The sort of you know, I can't wait till the government gets shut down. The government's got all kinds of problems with it. I mean, it's sort of weird, based on. Obviously, our government frustrates us all as Americans in one way or another. You know, no one is 100% happy with the government, maybe not even 50% happy with the government. I mean, as you say, the House of Representatives is sort of a crazy setup. I think you could open up the hood on a bunch of stuff when it comes to the way U.S. Elections are done, the way politics is decided, representation in California. We are way underrepresented. The Senate, to me, it's craziness that North Dakota, South Dakota, you know, you get to 2 voting representatives per state. Washington, D.C. has none, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So, but the idea somehow that those frustrations could make you or push you to the point where you'd want to see the government shut down, I think that's a real leap and disconnect in logic.
Yeah, well, and you know, it always sounds great. Yeah, let's shut the government down. Then, of course, you start thinking about what that really means. Okay. Like, you know, I mean, all kinds of things have to be funded that I guarantee you, even the people, you know, submitting those little comments in the chat, I would say, okay, listen, let me ask you something. Do you want FEMA funded? Should disaster response, like things happening all over the country right now, do we want that funded? Do we want those people on the job? Yeah, we need that. Okay, great. All right. How about a whole variety of other things? Certainly the military. I mean, you just go down components of the budget. You want to, you know, if you could, and this doesn't happen, but hey, you just want to stop the engines on the USS Eisenhower somewhere in the Pacific today. I mean, you know, it's like, the whole notion you're going to stop the government is craziness, right? What people really mean is the stuff I don't like, I want stopped.
Right.
That's usually what people mean. And I guarantee you, I could find stuff on both sides of the aisle. Hey, would you be okay if that shut down today? Yeah, I'd be okay if that shut down, but not those other 12 things I want.
Yeah. No, of course, that's exactly right. So, all right. Now I'm so happy to be talking to Gary Dietrich. You can find Gary, by the way, on Twitter, at Gary Dietrich, Dietrich. Gary, let's talk about this Biden document thing. It strikes us, we were talking about it last hour, and we sort of were just teasing the fact that we were going to be talking to you about it, but we kind of just gave it a broad stroke. It's different than the Trump stuff because this is a guy who wasn't actively trying to hide the documents, didn't have to, be delivered with multiple subpoenas and, and sort of had to shake his house till the documents came out type thing in the case of Biden. But that's not to at all excuse this, sequestering of certain documents. I wonder if you could speak to this and sort of frame it in a context. And then I'll shut up here, sorry to make this question long. But one of the things I like about Gary, Kim, is that he'll say, well, this isn't quite as bad as they say. And he gives you perspective. You do really help reframe things. So I'm wondering where you're going to come down on this Biden thing and how you'll reframe that for me.
Well, I think it's, this is the thing about politics more generally, okay? Rarely are things completely black and white. There are some, and those are important to point out. But so often it's a both and equation, Mark. And so I'm going to do that again. And this is in no way being mealy-mouthed or wishy-washy. It simply is what is. So here we go. Number one, two things. Number one, is the Biden revelation about some classified documents being found in his private office, apparently in a locked closet or whatever, but still found there. Is it materially different in many ways than the Trump documents? Yes, both in size and scope. Okay, so you had over 300 supposedly classified documents with in Trump's cache. You had, they say maybe 10, 12 here. So there are differences. Yes. On the other hand, and this is important, okay, should anybody be having classified documents accompanying them when they leave an official federal government position? I think we can all in unison say amen and no. All right. One commentator pointed out last night, who worked in the Pentagon, hey, listen, if I had left with one document as a communications person for the Pentagon, I could be federally prosecuted. If it just ended up in my file somehow, right, and it was found, they would probably come after me, tooth and nail. So I think the questions are important to ask. How does this keep happening, right? I mean, how is it that a sitting vice president, after 8 years, he didn't have some staff person just combing the files, right? Okay, here's a box of stuff. Let me just flip through that, make sure there's nothing in there that shouldn't be in there. Those are the questions I would ask, right? Look, guys and gals, we got to stop this, okay? This is not a good thing. This is not a partisan thing, but classified stuff has got to be kept inside the appropriate locations in Washington.
Does it lessen the severity of the Trump situation now that there's a kind of a counterbalance to it?
Well, it's certain. There's two components to that, Kim. From a legal perspective, absolutely not. I mean, the facts are the facts, right? So whatever Trump is culpable for and his people, those are the facts. But on the political side, it makes making that argument obviously far less clear cut now, right? That's the challenge. And then you take, people are asking the question today, what does it do to Merrick Garland and the pressure from the January 6th committee, for example, and all the rest of folks to go after Trump? Frankly, it makes his job more difficult because it's going to be so easy now to claim that there's some kind of preferential treatment. If, for example, they filed some charges or a special counsel went after Trump on some of this document stuff, and it doesn't happen for Biden, right? Even though the context is different, even though the scope of it, scale of it might be different, politically, it makes the job more difficult.
Well, it's funny because Garland has waited and he's got this guy is a Jack Smith who's also, now tasked with dealing with the Trump situation. You see how the political thickets have only become more intense. It hasn't helped get him, Garland, or the Justice Department out from under some of the stuff you're talking about, which are sort of the political realities of these potential prosecutions. What you also see, and then we can finish up here, but it's just kind of great the way this conversation has gone. It ends up in this place I wanted to get to anyway. You also end up with these state charges likely being leveled, and that's a whole different game. Doesn't involve Merrick Garland, right, Gary? The idea somehow that Donald Trump personally involved himself in an attempt to overthrow the results of an election.
Yeah, well, that of course, the January 6th thing is separate from the documents, but all of that in the public's mind gets balled together. There's two important components here to keep in mind. One is we are now firmly, and by the way, parenthetically, the Biden people made it clear over the weekend, we can expect an official 2024 announcement from the Biden team that he is running for re-election in the next few weeks. They're talking about a formal launch in April, but I would expect somewhere around the State of the Union time when that date is set. And by the way, that happens at the invitation of the Speaker of the House of Representatives. So that has yet to be determined, but it will happen. We're going to have that. So now my point is, guys, we're already into 2024. That makes all this stuff higher stakes and in some ways more difficult to pull off. And secondly, the challenge I think right now for the Biden team is, why was it that we didn't hear about this when these documents supposedly were turned over right around the midterm? It's just now being made public, by the Biden team, by Merrick Garland's office. That too presents, I think, an additional level of challenge in this whole thing that it's not going to be easy just to, toss aside.
But that again, I think you make a really good point when you talk about balling it all together. But that again may exist, with the Justice Department, Garland, political tiptoeing, Biden running for re-election, et cetera. But the Georgia thing, doesn't that continue apace? I mean, in the public's mind, it might all be balled together, but doesn't that run on its own track?
Oh, yeah. So does the New York state investigations too, Mark. I mean, all those state things are going to run down the tracks. There's no question about that. But the big kahuna always is Washington, right? I mean, people will ascribe a New York Attorney General, well, this and that, but the legal things are not anywhere near done with, and that could still have significant ramifications, certainly for Trump in a 2024 race, vis-a-vis not only Democratic but his Republican potential opponents, DeSantis or others.
Any other questions for Gary? If not, I will excuse the witness, Kim.
Anything else we want to ask him about the state budget?
Oh, I did want to touch on it, Gary. Was there anything that jumped out on you? We kind of ran down where it seems as though Newsom's priorities are. Obviously, we're looking at a shortfall as opposed to the surplus this time.
Right.
Maybe give us a second on that, if you would, please.
Yeah, we'll know a lot more details when the full detailed budget comes out today, Mark, which we don't have. We got some early indications. The early indications are what we kind of expected. There will be sort of a patchwork to cover over this $25 billion shortfall. Sounds huge, but with the rainy day reserves, with some shifting of funds, there's not an expectation there's going to be giant program cuts in the coming fiscal year. A lot of people in Sacramento are going to be waiting for either the shoe to drop, or are we really going to hit a big time recession at the end of this year? Can I say one quick word about the governor's inaugural march, though, on Friday?
Yeah.
Because I think it's really important what we saw Friday, because it was a made for national TV event when the governor walked down the Capitol Mall here in Sacramento from the Tower Bridge to to the state capitol, because on the 2-year anniversary to the day of the storming of the U.S. Capitol, I think Gavin Newsom put an exclamation point on his prospective future. Everything in the next 2 to 4 years that this governor does is going to be looked through the lens and the prism of a presidential run, be it in 24, 28, or whatever. I think Gavin Newsom has now put his marker down. And by the way, in this inaugural, just spent plenty of time attacking red states and red state governors, as he likes to do these days. Right now, all eyes on Gavin Newsom are going to be, okay, what's happening with the state budget and all, and comma, what does this mean for 24, 28?
Wow. Makes sense. Consistent, certainly, with the recent dances that he has done. So great to talk to you, Gary. Let's have a lot more of you in the new year. Gary Dietrich, you can find him on Twitter at Gary Dietrich, Dietrich. Friend of the show, friend of KGO for years, and now that KGO is gone, we're really glad that you've continued to be connected to us. Thanks, pal.
Okay, guys. Talk to you soon.
Gary Dietrich, everybody. Come on now. For Gary Dietrich.
Do you feel it? It's the Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Yeah, love my Gary Dietrich. Very, very cool. So when we come back, Albert, what are we doing when we come back? I've lost track.
Albert, thank you.
We did have some stuff we wanted to talk about yesterday. We have this ban on gas stoves as well, but yeah, there were some.
Oh yeah, we want to follow up. We've people to remember. We want to follow up on a couple of things yesterday. One of the stories I want to follow up is that Alzheimer's drug, because I got some stuff in the chat about it, and it made me want to. I read your comments in the chat, even if you're watching in replay. I read your comments in replay, and I wanted to double back and do a little more knocking around on that Alzheimer's drug, which, as you know, got FDA fast track approval, and we're a little skeptical, to say the least, about some of the particulars concerning it. So we will get to that when we continue. We'll also wrap up. And those of you who have shown us some love today with a super sticker or super chat, we'll recognize you. Smash the like
with
button.
your iron rod.
Like a boss.
And we got a
Smash
funny
that
comment yesterday, and we should talk about it.
Oh, yeah, we should. That's right. That'd be cool. Okay, good. So there's much to do. Kim's news theme is going to be modified. I got the email saying they wrote this theme.
Yeah.
For us. But they say, well, I see what you're doing with it. I think we're going to change this and change that. And Eric, he's so good at scorekeepers. He's going to redo it a little bit for us.
He's going to give me something to talk over, which I like.
Yeah. But for now, you get a big, brassy, hot theme.
Bring it.
So let's do it. Mark Thompson Show, thanks for being here, and much show to come as we continue.
We have processes and protocols and standards.
We do. It's big, it's brassy, it's beautiful.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. The drama, the intrigue. This report sponsored by tax attorney Steve Moskowitz at 888 Tax Deal. Let's go right to the Russian River. How about it? Not as bad as they thought it was going to be, but boy, were they prepared. Now, evacuation warnings that were covering thousands of residents from Jenner all the way to Guerneville and Healdsburg along the lower Russian River. The evacuation warnings are set to be lifted. A little minor flooding there, not as bad as they thought. Not the case, though, in Southern California. Highway 99, the scene of 2 people dying after a large eucalyptus tree fell right down on a highway, the tree landing on a pickup truck on Highway 99 in Visalia. It's unclear if the tree killed the two or if the death was caused by the impact of additional vehicles that then crashed into the truck. Another driver also died in that chain reaction pileup, so 2 dead in all. This marks at least 16 storm-related deaths in California since a series of atmospheric river storms began just before the new year. I'm going to play you video. I'm going to have to stop it because I can't talk over it, but here's how it looks in Chatworth. A massive sinkhole opened up and swallowed 2 vehicles. Let me take off this picture so that I can show you this video in
So LA City Fire Department resources arrived on scene and found 2 vehicles inside the sinkhole. 2 victims from the one pickup truck here had self-extricated, with 2 victims remaining in the car that's still down in the hole on its side. The whole street has been compromised, so we had to keep people back. So we attempted to try to get across, bridge the gap with ladders to get down from above to be able to hopefully open the door and self-extricate the 2 victims in the car. We were unable to.
What a nightmare. So they were
By the
able
way,
to
I
pull
know
the
it's
people
a
out.
very serious story, but I will ding self-extricated. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That for the
Anyway,
fire
go
chief
ahead.
there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is really, really scary. It was a mother and her young daughter.
But they got out
recovering
okay,
now
right?
in the hospital. They're recovering
Okay.
after the sinkhole swallowed their car. This is Highway 118 in the Chatsworth area. One of the cars landed right on top of the other and then flipped over. So that's pretty scary. The mother and the daughter were in the one on the bottom that flipped over. 2 other people, again, self-extricated. But it looks like despite that, everybody's going to be okay. But what a nightmare. This is how it is in California during these storms, with more storms, by the way, on the way in. The IRS. We've been talking a bit about this reaction pouring in after House Republicans voted to cut funding to the IRS. They did so yesterday by voting to get rid of much of the money given to the agency through last year's Inflation Reduction Act. The party line vote led to swift reaction from both sides of the aisle. Speaker Kevin McCarthy tweeting, "Promises made, promises kept." And former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said the fact that it was the GOP's first bill this Congress is shameful, she said, but not surprising. Yeah, let's go to Mr. Santos. The House Majority Leader says the controversy surrounding the newly elected Congressman George Santos is being handled internally. I bet it is. Louisiana's Steve Scalise was asked whether Santos should be a member of Congress after admitting to lying about his background on the campaign trail. He said Republican leaders will have to sit down and discuss the issues with Santos. Democratic lawmakers have requested an ethics investigation into Santos. Meanwhile, House Democratic Caucus Chair Pete Aguilar said Santos was only seated to give Kevin McCarthy the votes to clinch the speakership, adding McCarthy owns Santos lock, stock, and barrel.
Wow.
Visa downsizing in the Bay Area. The global credit card company with its headquarters in San Francisco is subleasing its office in Palo Alto. The 64,000 square foot space was home to about 300 employees. Let's head to Southern California. This is a kind of an abrupt closure. La Brea Bakery Cafe locations permanently closing. Aspire Bakeries announced its decision to shut its flagship location on La Brea Avenue in Los Angeles and its downtown Disney location today. The company said it met with staff at both locations to announce the closures effective immediately. Aspire Bakery says it's exiting the restaurant business to focus on growing its retail and food service business. I have to say, I'm surprised they would close that downtown Disney location because it's always packed. So you'd think that it was doing good business, but
yeah, I'm really surprised too. And that whatever their flagship restaurant or whatever you want to call it there on La Brea, that was like a place where like a lot of Hollywood cool kids would go before they would roll into the studios. They'd get a baguette and an espresso or a cappuccino. So I'm surprised to see it go. It seemed to always be crowded.
Yeah. So
and that stuff, the actual baked goods, they're distributed everywhere across airports and all sorts of Southern California locations.
And I guess that's what they want to focus on is just doing that, the retail, not the actual bakery.
Sure.
This is a Mark Thompson story, if I ever heard one. It's the irony. And you would think this would have already been a rule. The Los Angeles Police Department is considering adding a rule that would ban off-duty officers from carrying a gun while impaired by alcohol.
You're right.
I'd be willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol involved.
Right, exactly.
How is this not a rule already?
Right. That is sort of odd that that wouldn't already be a rule in place. And then it's odd that there are clearly enough incidents that are cropping up that they now need to go, hey, guys, maybe we should have a rule against that. You know what I mean?
The Board of Police Commissioners will vote on the policy today. Off-duty officers wouldn't be banned from drinking while armed. Why not? But would not be allowed to drink to the extent in which it causes impairment. So you could have a cocktail with your gun on your hip, but you just can't get drunk.
Oh.
It's fantastic.
There have been several documented incidents related to alcohol, including off-duty officers in recent years, but the LAPD is not giving an official reason for this proposed change.
I see.
And here's
What's a guilty pleasure you have?
I like to take my gun and we go over to the Red Jack. Order up a martini. Yeah, that's what I like to do. All right,
we're going to wrap it up with P22. I don't know if you've been paying attention to this case. This is in Southern California. This mountain lion was put down. Wow, they're holding a
memorial service kind of thing.
Yeah, it's kind of they're calling it a celebration of life is the word I was looking for. Tickets for the famed mountain lion P22 celebration of life sold out. The free tickets for the ceremony at the Greek Theater became available this morning, 9 a.m. The event will take place from noon until 2 on February 4th. It'll feature musical performances, dancing, and food. Those who are not able to get tickets for the event will still be able to watch it on a live stream. So many people want to celebrate P22's life that they're going to fill the Greek Theater. And if you want to go, apparently you can't. It's all filled up.
Wow.
I am dosing mushrooms right now.
All right. Well, I mean, that's one way to take it in. I probably they will stream it, as you say, right? So you can.
You can check it out online.
Yeah. All right. You can dose and check it out online. I'll tell you about P22 just in 30 seconds or less. This is This is an animal that they never thought would take up residency in Griffith Park in Southern California because it wasn't thought of as a space that was big enough for it to roam. You know, these are animals that are used to covering large territory, right?
Yeah.
But they followed it. They put a tagging device on it, and it survived for an extraordinary period of time. But very tough to be an urban cat, and ultimately hit by a car, and after that. The cat was suffering from those injuries to the point that it left its habitat in Griffith Park, and it had a sort of a mystical profile in Griffith Park. If you saw it as a tourist, it was something quite special. Always stayed away from people, and then after the collision with a car, it became desperate for food and became so compromised, and it was really a sad end. And finally. P22 had to be euthanized. So it's in sadness, but also because, as I say, it was such a big part of the texture of Southern California and Griffith Park, P22 will be recognized. Also, anybody who loves animals has to respect, the way that P22 was protected and celebrated by the community. So really something special.
Pretty animal. I mean, look at those eyes. Pretty unless it's coming at you, but you say he wasn't very aggressive.
No, not aggressive. Yeah, it was only at the very end after being hit by a car that it became desperate, and he went after, I think, small dogs, Chihuahua, that kind of thing. But that was all of a sudden he drifted from his natural, the place that had become his natural habitat.
Yeah. This report sponsored by tax attorney Steve Moskowitz. For more than 30 years, Steve has put his tax knowledge to work for individuals and for businesses. So if you need help with your taxes, call Steve at 888-TAX-STEAL. He's online at moskowitzllp.com. I'm Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Why are you yelling?
That's not fake. That's real.
It's fantastic.
Use Mark Thompson.
Hey, which one do you use, Mark Thompson?
What up, everybody? It's our big finish. Oh, yeah. We really packed the very best into the last few minutes. So glad that you could join us. I'm Mark. Albert is here, as you know, and
there's a reason that this place is fun.
There's a reason that this place is fun. It's true. Kim,
how are you?
Kim, as you know, just concluded. It is fun. We try to have fun with all the. How about this, Albert? What are we doing first now? You are my. You're my light in the night, Albert. What are we doing?
Albert, thank you.
What is it?
We just got a super chat in the way, so let's shout out our.
Let me shout
here.
out the super chat. Let me see it. Gail Guthrie, 1999. Stay safe, everyone. Never seen this much rain in the 40 years I've lived here. You are so right, Gail. And I give you a big Dan Ashley shout out and recognition for giving us a super sticker. And I'm going to do it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gail. I find your contribution will be just the thing to fuel me through the course of the day. Thank you. Andreas! We celebrate that Andreas is back. He's one of our biggest backers. And we love Andreas. I give you a big shout out. Big shout out. And I also give you a thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And another thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Really do love having you back in the scene, Andreas. So thank you so much.
What can you tell us about the scene?
Well, Larry, Andreas is back in the scene, as is Kevin Hobbs. How about a big shout out? Big shout out. Kevin Hobbs for $33. Come on.
I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry.
I'm not going to, but this is great, this outpouring of support. Thank you. Sadly, we need the support. This is how we stay on the air. Thank you, Kevin Hobbs. Kevin's so generous. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Really do appreciate it. Yeah. To all of you who've contributed today, super stickers, super chats, even if you're after the fact, you hit the little heart with a $sign, you can leave us something. Or if you go to Patreon and our PayPal, which is at themarkthompsonshow.com. You see at the bottom of your screen. Visit themarkthompsonshow.com and click contribute. And you can click on Patreon or PayPal, whatever you prefer. To all of you, I want to give you a thank you. So there you go.
Did you get this one? Was I just not paying close attention for the cats?
For the cats, I know. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you, Andreas.
Yeah.
Really cool. And I can speak to the cat situation. I don't have a P22 situation necessarily, but I do get up every morning and clean up cat pee and poop. That's not in the box anymore. We have an older boy who is, I know, and you're going to tell me he's trying to tell you something. Okay, I get it, but I'm having trouble figuring out what he's trying to tell me. He seems with good energy, good appetite to be healthy in other ways. So we're working with him. But
Incognito
anyway,
wants to know how your cat's doing. They saw your Instagram story that he was 6 and wondered how that's going.
Well, he was going to be seen by the doctor, and then we had a scheduling conflict. It's been very busy, as you know, and so the doctor still hasn't seen him. I have to say, though, you look at certain things with cats, as you guys are aware, appetite, energy, and grooming. If they're still good in all those areas, then it usually speaks to maybe some other latent or less obvious question. So we are going to get him to a doctor in the next week or so, but there's been a lot of other stuff going on. And so at this point, he seems relatively happy, but he does want to leave the pee and the poop in the living room, which isn't always fun. But when you get up in the morning and you know that's the first thing you have to do, it's definitely not a great way to start the day. But now
at least you know to watch your step. You know, you're not surprised by it.
But that doesn't mean that it's a good thing.
No, it's not necessarily a good thing.
Always find the silver lining.
Yes, but I have to say, urinary tract infection could be urinary stones, says Mindy. Oh, let's try to get him Get him to the doctor then. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mindy. I may have an infection. A lot of people are saying this. Okay. Well, now I feel like an awful
It's storming.
guardian.
Thunder
for
and
my-
lightning in San Francisco, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Buck is thinking perhaps the cat is questioning his sexuality. I don't think that's really an
Could
issue.
happen.
Yeah, but I think the urinary thing, you might be onto something. Albert, what happened yesterday? We got a question, I believe, in the chat, was it?
Yeah, I haven't even seen him in the chat, but here it is. This is from yesterday's show. In the
This is
section. It's there at the
Sherry at the bottom. Question: who the hell are Joe Box and Little Anthony?
Joe Box and Little Anthony.
So Joe Box and Little Anthony are mobsters who were, if you're new to the show, we had a mobster story. And
Joe Fish, Sal the Shoemaker, Joe Box, and Little Anthony.
Thank you. That's exactly it. Was that list, right? So I always liked Sal the Shoemaker. I felt like that was, didn't you felt like they're fitting you for cement shoes? Isn't that what Sal the Shoemaker refers to?
Of course.
You know? Yeah.
Joe Fish, Sal the Shoemaker, Joe Box, and Little Anthony.
But we took Joe Box and Little Anthony off of that. And we also took Mo Black's brother, Fat Andy.
Mo Black's brother, Fat Andy.
Right. And so when you hear us refer to them, they've just become sort of the patron mobster saints of this show. So Joe Box and I would say Fat Andy, right?
Yeah.
So that's where that
strong.
came
I like
from.
how there's multiple Joes and they're determining factors of which Joe is which with Joe Fish and Joe Box. It's great.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's a,
Joe Box and
Joe
Little
Box.
Anthony.
We have our own Joe Box now on this show, and he was the winning bidder for the Mark Thompson Show banner. Has he been in touch with you, Kim? What's the status of the banner delivery?
We spoke yesterday. He's closing his cafe today because of, I'm not sure, storm-related issues. And then we're going to coordinate. Apparently, I have to go to the UPS store at the same time that he's able to talk to them. So we're going to coordinate this whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Joe Box has a complicated life. I remember even in getting the banner, it was a little more complicated than we might have thought.
Extra nice guy, though. You know?
And I'm, yes, very nice guy. Debbie Cosentino says, and I'm still waiting to find out where the I'm not going to cry drop came from.
I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry.
That is should I tell them, Albert, where that came from? I mean, Albert, you're the boss.
Albert, thank you.
What should I?
You can peel the curtain a little bit.
Yeah, I think they want to know. Debbie's a supporter of the show. Why shouldn't she know? Exactly. That comes from the female lead in Ted Lasso. Do you know who that is? Albert, you can find that?
Google it.
Right. It's, all right, that's who that is. The female lead in Ted Lasso, the woman who owns the team, you know, that Lasso is coaching. Okay. That is her receiving the Emmy for that performance. So that's where that came from. Pam Waddingham. There you go.
Yeah.
So
I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry.
yeah. And I believe I had a
Yes, you can.
No, I had I thought I had a just thank you from her too. I have a bunch of thank yous that I was going to repopulate with.
I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry.
But my machine is down, my thank you machine, because Tony hasn't gotten to it yet because he's busy, you know, getting to David Katz and doing all that other stuff. But I have other thank yous potentially. Yeah, do you have her? Go ahead, show her if you would, Kim. Can you put her up there? Yeah, that's her. So that's the I'm not going to cry lady.
I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry.
Yeah, that's where that came from.
Ted Lasso.
Yeah, Ted Lasso.
One of the very few shows I actually watch.
Yeah.
And Joe Box did appear in the chat. He's here.
Joe Box is alive and well.
He is working until close, and he's not closing today.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. My bad.
So the complicated life continues for Joe Box.
Yeah, Joe Box has a lot of moving parts to his life. We
does.
appreciate him working us in, you know.
Wow, that is tremendously nice.
Like that's one you could use for a thank you. And
Thank you very much.
Yeah. I had some good thank yous. This is the one that I really want. I'm not crazy for those. This is the
Thank you. Thank you.
I like that. I feel like that's going to find its way in.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
Who is
if
that?
somebody else gives us,
because she donated $20 just while
Barbara, you're going to be the first person to get this.
Thank
you. Yeah, $20. Thank you, Barbara. That's really, really cool. Thank you. Yeah.
And thank you, Anna, and the applause. That's great. 2 birds with one stone right there.
I also would tell you that I see in the chat maybe Charlie has more going on with him. He's probably sicker than you think. So now I feel bad. So I will jump on the Charlie thing right away. My sweet boy Charlie. So my cat. So thank you for that, everybody. They're probably right. Yeah. What? Can I update that Alzheimer's thing? I don't mean to bum people out, but I was interested in following up on it because there's a new drug that has gotten fast track FDA approval, and we were talking about it yesterday. And I thought it important that we, I told you that I don't have great faith in this process by which the FDA has approved this Alzheimer's drug. And the other thing I was telling you is that a lot of the same forces that were at play in an earlier approval of an Alzheimer's drug, a lot of those same forces were at play here. And as I was knocking around looking, I found that there's some additional information, and it's disturbing. And now I don't have the piece. Ugh.
Is it about causing brain bleeds?
Oh, you put it in the chat? Thank you. Hang on a second. Yes, it's about what we were talking about. We mentioned it yesterday, the bleeding and the issues with the brain. And I told you the cost is it's almost $27,000 a year for treatment. A consensus statement signed by 200 scientists, many of whom had financial ties to the drug companies, described this drug as a foundational game changer for the disease. And so they were calling for this to be given the green light, and it was. Okay. A drug safety advocate, member of the FDA's Psychopharmacologic Drugs Advisory Committee, says that she's shocked, though, by this FDA fast-tracking of the drug. By the approving of this new Alzheimer's drug without a public advisory committee meeting, the FDA once again has shown a lack of concern for the public, patients, and healthcare providers. Convening its advisory panel would have helped reassure everyone that the FDA's decision was scientifically sound and transparent, she said. Now, let me get to what we talked about yesterday, but there are just a few more specifics, and that is that this is kind of the same dance they did with the last Alzheimer's drug, which had no real solid data behind its approval. The FDA's accelerated approval process used to greenlight this drug is known for accepting lower evidentiary standards for drug efficacy. Evidentiary is a ding word. So that patients can get access to experimental drugs sooner. Now, you may, though, look, I want access to the experimental drugs. Okay, but at least let's classify them as experimental. And the problem with classifying them as experimental is that Medicare won't pay for them, et cetera. We talked about that yesterday. That's the way to get drugs really into the general population, is to have them approved for Medicare insurance. Critics say it's reminiscent of the FDA's approval of the other Alzheimer's drug. This is what we spoke of yesterday. That was approved on the basis of lowering these amyloid proteins that exist in the brain that have been associated with Alzheimer's, right? So even though that's true, that they do lower the amyloid proteins, it doesn't actually correspond to any meaningful benefit in the patient. And isn't that what you really want? I want my cognitive abilities, my memory.
Right.
I want those to not be compromised.
Yeah.
So at the time of the FDA's approval of the last Alzheimer's drug, there was a resignation of an FDA advisory member who labeled it probably the worst drug approval decision in recent U.S. history. That was the last one, okay? So this to me is, I think it's in that gray area. What are the benefits? Quickly. They talk about this 1,800 people with early Alzheimer's disease who were treated. You can go back and watch yesterday's show. I kind of detail this in greater ways. 27% showed a slowing of the cognitive decline, okay? The harms, patients can experience headaches, falls, confusion, vision disturbances. It's unclear if patients will be able to see obvious benefits on a day-to-day basis. The data showed an increased risk of brain bleeding, swelling. And this happened with enough people. Yeah, and it occurred in 126, 14% of the subjects, and only 7.7% of the subjects in the placebo group. I'm going to post this up to my Twitter feed if you want to read more about it. But again, the FDA's credibility in this area is suspect at best, and I just wanted to follow up on it because I felt as though it was something that we touched on yesterday and is of utmost importance.
This drug is supposed to be given early on in an Alzheimer's diagnosis, not toward the end, right?
That's right. That's right.
So to me, it seems like if you're going to put an experimental drug to market that, or you're going to approve it, that as a patient, if I was at the end of my life and I was probably going to die anyway, or soon, that's when I want to take the experimental drug, not at the beginning. At the beginning, when you still have quality of life, you still have some cognitive abilities, maybe, that's not the time to take the experimental drug. I don't know. That's just my thinking.
I mean, yes and no. I would say if you knew that this was an effective medication that could slow cognitive decline, which is going to happen with Alzheimer's, it's a progressive illness, and you knew that this was generally safe without all the side effects to which I've just referred, then you might jump on it early. In the same way, if you had cancer, you might jump on it early. Right. I mean, I get that you've got to get on these things early.
Right.
The problem with this is that it would seem to be, and there seem to be a lot of problems with this actually, but I'll just give you a couple of them.
I mean, the brain bleeds, stumbling around, losing your ability to walk.
I mean, getting on it early, and if it's going to be a festival of side effects, not cool. Right. And then if it doesn't really work effectively, then that's a problem. Again, getting rid of those amyloid proteins is not the same thing as improving cognitive function. Now, this latest drug, they say, does slow cognitive decline. If that's true, and you could lower doses or otherwise modify this so it doesn't have the side effects it has, maybe that's something that you want to talk about.
Right.
But quality of life, it's exactly right. Somebody said Nick says this is right. Quality of life is preferred over quantity. So if you're going to be, and this is the problem we have with so many cancer treatments and end-of-life treatments. They can be just so debilitating that, you're not doing the person any favor anymore.
No, it just kind of draws it out even longer. The pain and the suffering go on even longer.
Yeah, but I wanted to follow up on that Alzheimer's thing. And then everybody, this is a good point Cindy's making, that everyone's dementia or cognitive decline is different, right? So you don't really know. All you have is statistics. And the problem with dementia, and we talked about this the last time, and then I will wrap up because I can see Nikki's show is about to start. The problem with dementia and cognitive decline and Alzheimer's is that what you really have is a situation that's difficult to quantify. You don't have the size of the tumor, let's say, or things related to other maladies that we have treatments for. You have questionnaires and you have ways to ascertain would be a ding word, how bad somebody's situation is. But the actual dialing in of how you should treat it, that becomes a very squishy area. And that's yet another problem with Alzheimer's, dementia, and some of these different illnesses that affect us later in life often, or even not so late in life in terms of cognitive challenges. I know we're over time. I'm glad maladies is a ding word. I think you're right. Tom, I enjoy Mark's. Yeah. We used to have Fauci somewhere where he would say, you don't know what, everything's out of order here. I don't know where the Fauci
That's not fake. That's real.
No, not that's what fake. It's
You do not know what you are talking about.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I liked. Squishy is not a ding word, exactly. Squishy is the proper medical term. Okay. Oh, no, you're kidding. Really? I have to end the show on a discussion of diminishment of cognitive function. It's not necessarily the way we normally. I do want to thank Andreas for showing up again on our with the Super Chats, and all of you who, alongside Andreas, showed up in the Super Chats. And I think he's over at Nikki's show anyway. He can't hear this. But all of you are so kind. We need your support. Sadly, it's sort of the only way we stay on the air, so thank you. Thanks to Gary Dietrich for showing up, and big shout out to Spencer Christian for being here. Spencer has already said he'll come back tomorrow. Big Dan Ashley, shout out, Spencer.
Big shout out.
Yeah. And thank you, Albert.
Albert, thank you.
Kim will be over with
how are you?
Nikki. We've got a great show always. I watch it every day.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Everybody stay dry. Be careful.
Bye-bye.
Until we meet again. Kim hosts the show tomorrow. It's going to be exciting. Bye-bye.